Hello, booktube. Welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is another edition of Fresh Red Kills. So on Fresh Red Kills, I talk about my current reads, and I have been doing two read-alongs that have been going on in at least one particular corner of booktube. The first one is the one that's hosted by Steve Donahue and Matt from Mayberry Book Club, and that is Evelyn Waugh's Brideshead Revisited, a British novel originally published in 1945. I'm about halfway through, and I've got a lot of thoughts on this one so far. Like everybody, I have admired the writing, absolutely. Waugh definitely had a command of the language. It is a beautifully written book, and there are many themes that I'm picking up on that I'm finding very interesting. I've watched some of the responses, or some of the videos. I watched Matt's and Steve's. I also saw Sean Steadfast. He made some videos about this, and all of them have come to admire this work. Either they already admired it because they'd read it before, and Matt appeared to be beginning to really like it. I am a little bit mixed on this one so far, and I guess I'll get into that in a little bit. So this is a book where we have Charles Ryder. We see him in the first part of the book, the prologue, where he's an officer in the British Army in World War II. And he's kind of going through the everyday routines of a soldier. And that seems to be the kind of theme in the beginning, is that they're just doing things without actually loving it anymore. And I'm guessing that maybe there's going to be a theme of that carrying on throughout the book. But anyway, his regiment, while they're doing their routines and drills and they're moving throughout the country, they end up coming to Brideshead Manor, which is now deserted, it appears. And he knew that place intimately when he was young. So now the narrative goes back to the 1920s when he was an undergraduate student at Oxford University, and he first met Sebastian Flight, whose home was Brideshead Manor, and he's kind of this real aristocrat, kind of something like this crowd is somebody that you don't see Dorian Gray be able to fit in some way. Kind of a loafer, and Charles ends up becoming very infatuated with Sebastian. Although there definitely seems to be a sexual attraction to him. Although I think that there is something else that Sebastian represents that he ends up really liking. I guess I'll get into that. I don't want to go too much into the story. This is not meant to be a conversation where I recount the plot. I'd rather just kind of talk about the theme. So if you haven't read it, I'm not going to be giving away too many spoilers at all. And if you have read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. So again, this whole beginning section, the first couple chapters take place just after World War I. And World War I really does hang heavy in the book, in this idea of death and how Charles was of the age where he just missed the Great War. So, sorry, I do have some notes here, so I didn't forget everything I want to refer to. Charles's own mother died in Serbia while serving for the Red Cross during the war. You have people within the novel remark a few times that things aren't like what they used to be in 1914. And there is this, an obsession with death in a certain way. Charles even decorates his dorm room with a skull, with I believe it was supposed to be a real human skull. And we see skulls come about later on, which I'll talk about. They also seem to be a little bit regretful that they missed their chance to be soldiers. And that plays a role later on as well. So I said that, death and a skull would come about again. It's interesting when it does come about. I had said that Charles becomes very infatuated with Sebastian, and he mentions at one point in the book that, when he was of this age, he had no experience with women at all, and I believe it, the way that he writes about them. At one point, they do come to hang out with a couple of prostitutes, and female prostitutes, and Charles refers to one, I think it's like a sickly child or a sickly boy, and another one that he's hanging out with, he says her face is like a skull, and he refers to her as the death's head, and that seems awfully harsh. I have a feeling that most men maybe would not have chosen those sorts of descriptions for these women. But it does make me think about what he means by this. I mean, we have that death motif again, but also women seem to represent maybe a loss of youth. Sebastian, I think, represents youth in a lot of ways. He carries around a teddy bear still when he's 19 years old. He has an infatuation, that not romantic, but this real connection still with his nanny. He wants to go and visit her, not really see any of his family. So he's youth. I think that Charles is still infatuated with that youth. And women, moving beyond kind of a more homoerotic relationship with Sebastian and moving on to women, I think represents a certain loss of youth, loss of innocence, coming on to, it's kind of a reminder of, women are a reminder of death for him, I think, in that way. So that's one thing that I'm seeing, that I'm finding pretty interesting. Another thing about Charles, and this is where I kind of get into why I'm a little bit mixed with this book so far, is the writing is absolutely beautiful, but I'm not in love with the story so far, and I especially would say that I'm not eager to continually pick up the book and spend time with these people. I don't necessarily like Charles all that much, or Sebastian. These kind of, especially Sebastian's kind of spoiled aristocrat. It's been over 200 pages. Charles, I had said, yes, there probably is maybe like a sexual attraction to Sebastian, and there is that youthful attraction. But I think that Charles is also very much infatuated with aristocracy and with, the old gentry. His appreciation for art grows throughout the book. However, he criticizes heavily modern art. He loves the old stuff. And at one point, as the story goes on, Sebastian falls into alcoholism. They don't call it that, but that's what we would call it today. And Charles makes some regretful decisions. He angers Sebastian's mother, and he leaves this manor house, Brideshead. And I think he even says that he didn't really feel remorse at the time when Sebastian's mother is basically saying to Charles that she feels betrayed by him. But he talks about how this little door to his secret garden that was opened up with Sebastian, he feels is being closed to him. And I don't think that he means the love of the family. I think that he means his entry into this aristocratic lifestyle that he's infatuated with. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why he loves older art. Another figure that enters this picture is Rex. He's a Canadian, and he's a part of the British government. He ends up being engaged to Julia, who is Sebastian's sister. And, Rex is seen as, he's depicted as somebody who's very distasteful, but really, I think what Charles doesn't like about Rex is that he's modern. There's a whole scene, I think Steve read the paragraph where, on his video about part 2 of Brideshead, where they're drinking wine, and that wine that Charles is drinking while he's at dinner with Rex reminds him that Rex knows nothing of the great history and doesn't appreciate it. I think that Rex seems to understand very well, actually, what the history and gentry are and where they're going and what they represent. I think that, because Rex especially is telling Charles that this family is going broke and that their lifestyle is not going to live very long, Charles is disliking hearing this, and he sees Rex as being too modern. Charles talks about his distaste for modern art. I don't think that he likes what is modern. Certainly a kind of vulgar, bullying North American is way more modern than the kind of ancient Flight family over at Brideshead, who are still very much tied to older ways. So throughout this so far, yes, I like the writing a lot. I don't know if I'm connecting with the story terribly. It is kind of picking up a little bit, I think, in the second half. We got more, I'm at the point where we're talking more about Julia. Catholicism is playing a much bigger role as things are going on. It was always kind of in the background, but they're talking about it kind of incessantly. Rex trying to convert to Catholicism, the different Catholic rules, Catholic guilt we keep on seeing. And I'm wondering where that's going. I'm kind of afraid of where Waugh might take this. I don't want to say what exactly that is, but I'm hoping I'm not going to be rolling my eyes by the end of this. But I think that the conversations around religion are interesting. Cordelia messing with Rex and lying to him about Catholic rites and having sacred monkeys in the Vatican, I thought was pretty great stuff. But, you know, those are the characters that I'm enjoying the most, are these little side characters that we don't see as much, including Charles's father, who we see a few times. But, yeah, okay, so that's where I am at this point, right? I love the writing. I don't know if I'm connecting with the story. And that might be a purely subjective thing on my part, and I totally understand that. You know, the only analogy I can give is like certain kinds of prog rock, where I can listen to this band and I can, you know, listen to whether the drummer or whatever, you know, the technicality of the musicians, and I can recognize just how good they are. But when I take the song as a whole or listen to the album, I'm just kind of left cold as far as an emotional connection. So, you know, that's kind of where I am with this. I don't feel much emotional connection at all to this. And I'm not eager to continually pick up the book to see where the story is going necessarily. And I wish I was. I do kind of wish that I wasn't. Who knows? I still have, you know, another second half of the book to go. And it might pick up a lot. I'm not entirely sure. But that is just kind of a subjective preference, I think, at this point on my part. And we'll see. Now, the other thing that I'm reading, the other read-along that I am following, is the Saga Long, where various booktubers are reading Njal's saga, written down in the late 13th century, although dealing with events, this is a work of fiction, that basically would have happened, I think, in the 10th century around. And this is the one that I keep getting really excited about reading. I'm kind of savoring it. I'm going fairly slow. I'm on the 55th chapter, if you want to call it that. They're very short sections. But this is the one that I keep wanting to go back to over Brideshead, but I do want to get through Brideshead. You know, filled with some very humorous moments. It's got some good bloodshed. I was just reading about one character throwing a spear, then went through a shield, went through the person, stuck into the ground. You know, when the action happens, it really happens. However, this is more a saga about legality, legislation, and it's one of the family sagas, and really about blood feud. As I read this, I couldn't help think about a book that I had read when it first came out. This is like 18 years ago now, but Blood Feud, Murder and Revenge in Anglo-Saxon England by Richard Fletcher. This was published in 2003 by Oxford University Press, and this was about the blood feuds that occurred for about 60 years in really Northumbria, the northern earldom of Anglo-Saxon England. And, you know, 3 generations just going back and forth with this, you know, very large-scale murderous Hatfield and McCoy type of thing going on. Really kind of leading up to the Norman Conquest. So, you know, we see, you know, the Anglo-Saxon culture certainly had a lot in common with Norse cultures, especially in Northumbria, in the north of England. Yeah, that was Viking territory. It was the Danelaw. So, you know, a lot of these families were both Anglo-Saxon and Norse. So this is kind of an extension, and this would have been happening, I think, around the same time. Like I said, I think Njal Saga might be in the 900s, possibly. So maybe the stuff that's being depicted in there is kind of just before this time period. But still the same kind of situation. So again, I'm just going to go look at my notes again real quick so I don't forget everything. Some of the stuff in Njal Saga. It opens up with Hrut. The first couple chapters, which almost feel like a non sequitur at first, but I think that they do establish marital strife, which is a big theme in this. Men not really trusting their wives, women's agency, the kind of, I wouldn't say independence, but the kind of power that women can wield, sometimes for ill, and this often for ill. But we have surprising things like the importance of a woman's sexual gratification. That comes up as a kind of major plot points throughout this. The way that women can manipulate things as well. So there are some very distinct women, female characters in this that don't feel like cardboard cutouts, which is terrific. And there are some funny parts, especially involving, in the beginning, Hrut and his wife, and why they can't consummate their marriage. And I couldn't help but think that I don't quite understand, how did medieval Icelanders, how did they consume these? I'm guessing that they were just read aloud to people. So was the comedy that I'm finding intentional? Would they have found this also funny? I kind of want to assume that they would, but I just don't quite know. And that's what makes it difficult to judge exactly what they're trying to do at certain points. But nonetheless, I'm still really enjoying this. We do finally end up seeing Njal and his friend Gunnar. And a lot of this whole first part, at least, is about their bromance. They are caught up in this blood feud that is really being fueled by their wives. And at every turn, Njal and Gunnar are constantly trying to save their friendship. That's what they want more than anything, is to keep their friendship and not become enemies. And Gunnar is kind of like this. He's this amazing fighter. If he wants to be, he can be like a killing machine. Njal is much more of the thinker, the legislator. So they kind of make an interesting match. The brawn and the brains in a lot of ways. But they value each other's friendship above all else. And their wives keep on making that very difficult for them. But I like that. That seems to be like the real tragedy, because we know something's going to drop, That's where the tension is will Njal and Gunnar remain friends? So I am interested to see how this is all going to play out. I do know how these guys come to an end already. I did read the introduction, which I don't mind being spoiled on things like that. The introduction was certainly helpful. This is the Robert Cook translation. And a few things that he said in this is, first of all, this is fiction, even though it feels like a nonfiction chronicle in a lot of ways. This is a work of fiction. These are not people who existed. But also, this is a time when Iceland, that's being depicted, did not have a king. So we see kind of a semi-quasi-democratic process, at least among the wealthy men, going on here. And this might have when this was being written in the late 13th century, Iceland had come under the control of the King of Norway. So they might be kind of looking back nostalgically for a time period when they didn't hold sway to kings all the time. So I thought that was kind of an important aspect to understand about this. So I'm glad that I'm reading it with that perspective. But yeah, I'm having a great time with this. Norse culture, Norse mythology, it's one of my favorite time periods to research, one of my favorite cultures to look into. So yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying this. I'm savoring it. I'm taking my time. And Brideshead I might finish this week possibly, and I'll see where that takes me. But this one, I think I am just going to kind of slowly go throughout the month and follow along with everybody else. So yeah, that's what I've been reading. In terms of what I've been watching, I haven't watched a lot. I did finally watch Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Bly Manor, which was on Netflix. I didn't really watch it last year, but I watched it this year, and I finished watching that, and I really enjoyed it. I love the way that he tackles ghosts. I think he does a terrific job. Just recently on the HORRORCAST, we recorded an episode where we look at 2001: A Space Odyssey as a horror film, and we pair it up with, from the same year, 1968, The Green Slime, which is about as different from 2001 as you can get. And we had a fun time recording that one, and that should be out later on this week. But yeah, that's it. I'm gonna try and maybe get some more filming done this week, hopefully. Although we're gonna take the kids away for a few days. We're gonna stay in state, not go too far, but we're just gonna get out for a little bit. So we'll see what kind of filming I'm able to do. But that's it. All right. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. And have a great week. All right. Thanks, BookTube.